Well, good morning. I'm King County Executive Dow Constantine. Thank you for being here. I'm joined this morning by our County Assessor, John Wilson, by Whatcom County Executive Jack Lowe's, San Juan Council Chair Jamie Stevens, San Juan Council Member Rick Hughes, Kittitas Commissioner Obie O'Brien, Superior Court Judge Susan Craighead, as well as Corinna Harn from the Superior Court. We have as well, joining us this morning, the Mayor of Pacific, Leanne Geyer, the Mayor of Shoreline, Chris Roberts, and there are some others who will be introduced as we proceed. I want to thank all of these elected officials joined us today. We have come together to urge the legislature to reform local government revenues. The 1% cap on property tax revenue was the brainchild of Tim Eyman, which tells you a lot about whether it is good public policy. In 2007, after the the initiative was thrown out by the court, the legislature reinstated the 1% cap. The court said that that initiative, I-747, was unconstitutional because it misled voters about the substantive impact of the initiative on existing law. Across Washington, we are seeing what that substantive impact really is. It's quite an understatement. At a time when the economy is the strongest it has been in years, we're being forced to reduce or eliminate key services. It's time now for legislators to rethink this toxic legacy of Tim Eyman and reform local government revenue sources. The public needs to know that local government is constantly innovating and squeezing costs down. Our biennial budget once again maintains costs below the rate of inflation and population growth. We provide real value for the vital services people demand: reliable transit, public health, environmental protection, justice. But here's the thing. Our population continues and will continue to grow. And so too does our economy. That increases pressure for services that we simply do not have the funds to provide. All of us are here today to call on the legislature to fix this situation in the upcoming session. We're asking for reform from Olympia. The demand for services we provide is great, and it is growing as our communities and state are growing. I'm very pleased to introduce the leader of one of those growing jurisdictions, the executive of Pierce County, my colleague Pat McCarthy.
Great. Thank you, Dow. I am actually delighted to be in a room that's called the Solutions Room here in King County. But I would like to tell you just a little bit about the South Sound and Pierce County. We're the second largest county in the state of Washington. I have a $900 million overall budget. It's an annual budget, and we spend about close to $300 million on our discretionary budget, which 80% of it goes to public safety and the criminal justice system in my county. We have very little money left over for the human services side of our operation. So we have been taxed in Pierce County with challenging issues relative to eradicating homelessness, mental health crises, affordable housing, which is not endemic to my county, and you will hear from my colleagues across the state of Washington. It is true for all of us trying to find solutions to these very challenging problems. I like to say governing is not for the faint of heart. This is for people who are willing to stand up, roll up their sleeves, and do the hard work of governing and finding solutions to these problems. But having two main funding streams in county government, property tax and sales tax, and having an arbitrary limit on property tax is just what it inhibits us for reaching and solving some of the problems that we have in Pierce County. I have submitted my budget in Pierce County, but we still have some challenges as it relates to dealing with our mental health issues in our county, and I've embedded the 0.1% for mental health initiative in my county, a tax in my county, so that we can actually give a shot in the arm to that those challenges that we have in our county. But I will tell you, there's very little money left over to be able to meet all the needs. And you know, our water doesn't, our air, our water, our roads doesn't end at our county lines. So we're all in this together. And I'm happy to be here with Executive Constantine as he is meeting the needs of his community up here in King County. So I am delighted to introduce my other colleague from Snohomish County, Dave Summers.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Pat, and Dow, thank you for inviting me to join you here today. Before I address this issue, I just wanted to express our sympathy to all those affected by the shootings in Burlington. We lost a county employee and her mother in the shootings, and our hearts and prayers go out to the family and the community in Burlington and throughout the region. You know, one of the reasons county government's so important to our citizens is because public safety is job number one. About 76% of our budget goes to the criminal justice system, and these are our first responders. These are the people that show up protecting our citizens and working in horrible situations like we exhibited the other day. I joined Dow and Pat, excuse me, I'm thinking of Burlington, but in asking for more tools to fund local government. We are in a death spiral, frankly, in local government. Our costs go up over 5% a year. Our revenues go up a little over 3% a year in Snohomish County. That means we cannot even continue the services we were doing today into next year. I just delivered my budget on Friday. It cuts across all departments, including the sheriff's office, which we tried to minimize the cuts, but that's $2 million a year out of the sheriff's office, which we should not be doing in these times. We're one of the most rapidly growing counties in the state, and we need to be there for our citizens. So I urge the legislature to fix this problem. It's not sustainable, and it's not what our citizens deserve and need from us. So thank you. I'd like to introduce King County Prosecutor Don Soderberg.
Yeah.
Dan.
You can tell I'm from Snohomish County.
It's his office. Sorry. No worries. Thank you. You know, as we continue to dismantle a great criminal justice system and public safety infrastructure in King County, I often hear people who want to blame Tim Eyman. And I have to remind them that in 2007, the Supreme Court threw out the Tim Eyman initiative, as they so often do. And yet the legislature couldn't wait. They had to have a special session to go back and make it the law of the state. And when they did, they assured us that this wouldn't affect any government services. Well, they were wrong. And in the last 9 years that I've been the elected prosecutor here in King County, my office has lost more than 60 FTEs. That's attorneys and staff, 60. I will tell you, that does affect us. It affects the way that we can handle cases, the speed with which we can handle cases. Today, things are taking way too long. Backlogs are building up on important felony matters that we would like to file right away, but we can't because we have to get to today's murder and today's armed robbery, so we can't get to yesterday's residential burglary until we do those. So it is a real strain. It's having a real impact on crime and justice in King County. And what we have set up and what the legislature endorsed and what they can fix is a system of perpetual erosion. This will never go away. It will never get better. We'll continue to cut and cut and cut under our current system. So it is the legislature's job to realize the impact on local government and to fix it, and that's what we're going to go together and ask them to do. I would like to introduce Sheriff John Urquhart, who can talk more about the impact on public safety of our system.
Thank you, Dan. Many of the reporters in the room remember Goldie. Goldie wrote for The Stranger, He also had a blog called Horse's Ass. Strange name. But in 2007, he wrote a piece for his blog, and he predicted exactly what would happen when the legislature changed this law. Exactly. He's the Nostradamus of Horse's Ass. He absolutely predicted that we would be in the situation we are now. And you look at King County, the most prosperous county in the state. Unemployment at practically zero. Look at the cranes out there. Remember, we're the home of Starbucks and Costco and Boeing and Nordstrom's and Amazon.com, and yet we can't make ends meet, frankly, because of the legislature, because they refuse to change this law. And then extrapolate that to the other 38 counties in King County, in the state of Washington, and they're in the same boat, only worse, because they don't have all the economic drivers that we do. And you look at King County, the great job that Dow has done. He's reduced the size of King County. He's kept expenses to about 3 or 3.5%, the rate of inflation, basically. And we still don't have enough money, so it trickles down to criminal justice. Now, when I was told what our cuts were going to be, I had two choices. I could either cut back on patrol officers, or I could get rid of the Marine unit and get rid of the helicopter unit. And I chose those two, knowing full well that people were going to die because we would not be able to rescue them. We wouldn't be able to go up to Burlington or the next Burlington and look for the bad guy. Now, we've kicked the can through the Dwight Dively, the budget director, and through Dow, we've kicked the can down the road for the next 12 months. But if those two units go away, if the legislature doesn't change the law, and those units will go away, how do I protect the people, not only of King County, but this is a regional asset. This helicopter unit, for example, goes to Lewis County, goes to Tittatas County. It goes up to the Burlingtons. It's everywhere. It's out at the port for port security. We're not going to have that. And that's very, very, very important, and literally, it saves lives. Thank you. I'd like to introduce Mayor Nancy Backus, City of Auburn, and President of the Sound Cities Association.
Thank you. Good morning. You know, it's always said that local elected officials need to be creative in how they provide services to their cities. Well, quite frankly, creativity is a little overrated and we're almost out of it. We have been trying to be creative with how we balance our budgets for years. And the 1% property tax cap is no friend to any of us in this room. You've heard what some of the cuts are going to be at the county level, and at the city level, we have the same problems. Auburn is a full-service city. That means we're required to provide for roads, for public safety, and utilities. Now, 1% growth in property taxes versus, let's just say a 2% growth in wages for our employees because they deserve to be paid. It doesn't take a math genius to figure out if you have one cost going up this much and revenues going up this much, you're going to have an exponential difference that it's going to take forever to try and fix. It can be fixed easily at the state level with the state legislature by reducing or eliminating the 1% cap. If we could have inflation plus population growth, that's a fair cap to have on property taxes. Property taxes are one of the main revenue sources for a city, that and sales tax. Sales tax, we know, is unstable. We can't rely on that. We have to have something at the local level to be able to provide the services that our citizens expect us to provide. Through Sound Cities Association and also Association of Washington Cities, we have made the 1% property cap removal one of our top legislative priorities. We'll be as creative as we can possibly be, but give us the tools to do the job that you elected us to do. Now I'd like to introduce Executive Director of the Washington State Association of Counties, Eric Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Eric Johnson with the Association of Counties. We represent all 39 counties. So in addition to the 3 that you've heard from today, I'm representing the other 36 and joined by a number of our elected leaders. You heard this morning of the financial challenges that are facing King County and how they directly translate to service impacts, in particular into the criminal justice system, public safety, and certainly into public health. And what I'm here to tell you is these challenges are not limited to King County, our 3 most populous counties in Pierce and Snohomish, but has an issue facing all 39 counties, regardless of the population size, regardless of the region. Each of our areas, each of our counties are facing these exact same challenges. For the past 4 years, the Association of Counties has made fiscal sustainability our priority. We have talked to the legislature about this in 3 core areas. The first is to give us the tools to gain flexibility in existing revenue sources. The second has been, how do we drive our costs down? We need help from the legislature from time to time to do the efficiencies that you've heard that King County has done. Sometimes that takes need to change state statute. And the third is on new local option revenue sources and the new property tax cap, a new property tax cap, a reasonable property tax cap based on inflation and population growth is our #1 priority. It's a new cap that gives the local decision makers, those that are elected to have that conversation in their community, the ability to have it. And that's what we've been asking for. That gives us the ability to fix this arbitrary 1% cap. That's what we're asking the legislature to do. This is key for us to be able to assure that our local elected officials has the revenue and the capabilities to meet the constitutional requirements that they have to deliver and the statutorily responsibilities as well. So I turn it back to Executive Constantine and be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. So you've heard the problem, you've heard our proposed solution. It's actually quite simple, but the politics are not. And we are united, counties and cities from Puget Sound across central and eastern Washington, in our determination to fix this unsustainable situation. And we would be glad to take any questions you might have.
You said politics are difficult, so what's the game plan? How are you going to be a little bit different?
Well, you know, the first thing is for legislators in each local area to understand how their constituents are being harmed by the cuts their local governments are having to make. That's why the message that a lot of Eric's county members from across the county are carrying to their legislators, that message is critical. Folks want to make sure there are enough cops. They want to make sure that crimes can be prosecuted. They want to know that public health is being provided for. They want these basic services, the services the legislature has tasked county and city governments with providing. And they don't really realize that we have this goofy tax system that is completely out of alignment with the way the economy works and the demands of this growing population.
Is that an ad campaign? I mean, what's the game plan?
You know, I'm going to let Eric talk about our united work across the state with the legislature. I don't personally have the money to fund an ad campaign. So we do a lot, there's a lot of shoe leather involved in these kinds of efforts. You want to speak a little more to
Yeah,
that?
great. So we are working with a property tax coalition of affected local governments by the property tax cap, really explaining this message. And we really think there is this educational component that the structural problem that county government in particular is facing around revenue to expenditures needs to be understood. For example, the state collects of its total revenue, about 10% is property tax. Across the 39 counties, the average is closer to 45%. So the 1% cap, it affects county government in a much different way than it affects either the cities or the state. So there's a lot of education component, particularly dealing with the legislative leaders. But we also want the community to realize that the impacts to public safety, criminal justice, and public health, the behavioral health services, all are going to continue to decline based on that.
Can you clarify, you were talking about having a new cap. It's based on inflation and population growth. Were you suggesting that there should be a different cap for different areas, or are you talking about a statewide large cap?
We're focused on county government, for sure. That's what our message is here. But I think that's universal, whether it's cities, et cetera, where it is around population inflation. So that could look different jurisdiction by jurisdiction. King County's inflation is different than Garfield County and Pomeroy's inflation. So yes, there could be a potential difference.
Is the air unit, and is that one helicopter, and the Marine is one boat? And how often do you use those? When was the last time they were used? Can you explain a little bit?
What time is it? Marine unit is used, and I'm still checking to see if they were the ones that pulled the body out of the lake in Auburn. I don't know if that was us or not, but it probably was. So they're used all the time. It's more than one helicopter. Typically, we have two. One is a police helicopter with the downlink, so on and so forth. The other's called Guardian 2, and that's got the hoist capabilities. It's a Huey. So there's one of the two that are up, or at least available, 24 hours. Now they're not up all that many hours. What I'm going to have to do is cut back the use of those. I still have them for a year, but I've got to cut back the budget on those. So they're not going to be flying nearly as much as they were before. In fact, they'll be flying only enough to keep the pilot hours up. As far as the helicopters are concerned, and essentially the same thing with the Marine unit. They're going to be out there much less in the next year. Now, there's several boats at various sizes down to a dinghy, essentially.
How much less do you think?
I don't know yet. I've got to see the dollar amount coming over from the budget office, but it could be significant. I suspect that we will not be going to other cities at all. They've been getting the service for free. We're going to cut that back to cut down on the flight time, so it'll just be King County unless the other cities are willing to pay for it. But again, they're in the same boat.
Was Guardian 1 used this weekend in Burlington?
I'm not sure. I heard that there was a helicopter up there. We pretty much have the only police helicopter in the area, any helicopter in the area that can do that sort of work. So I assume that they were, but I can't confirm that yet. Okay.
And again, you understand that this air unit is paid for out of King County's budget, and really a lot of it just out of the unincorporated area budget, and yet it's serving all the county and really all the state. And that is a misalignment that finally has become unsustainable.
Are there examples of roads or bridges specifically that haven't gotten fixed that are at the top of your head,
Yes.
that are sitting out there?
All of them. I mean, seriously, we have like 1,500 miles of road, way over 100 bridges. They're all old. None of them are receiving the full maintenance they should get to optimize their lifespan. And our roads budget, I mean, because all of our formerly unincorporated population that was in urban areas is now inside cities for the most part, and all the businesses, tax-paying businesses are inside cities. We were just left with this legacy of hundreds of miles of road with not very many people and not very expensive property left to pay the taxes to maintain it. That is a separate situation for the most part from this 1%. But that is another example of where the legislature needs to recognize the reality today in 2016 of the services we need to provide and give us revenue sources that are aligned to that need.
I'm sure that I've actually heard some of you talk a lot about the regressive tax system in the state, and you've probably heard from people who feel very burdened with more property taxes despite how they may support fully funding law enforcement, prosecutor's office. What would you say to people who feel overly taxed, and would you recommend perhaps an income tax instead?
We need statewide tax reform. The base of upon which our revenues are built has gotten narrower and narrower over time. And at the same time, we cannot stop policing or prosecuting or fixing transportation, waiting for the legislature to come up with the ideal solution for revenues. I think that they need to take that task seriously as well, to ask, how could we raise the funds this state needs, this community needs, in a way that is fair to everyone, that's sustainable over time, that tends to encourage business growth rather than discourage it? Those are, higher level questions, but they're important ones, and a responsible legislature would begin to really grapple with that question.
Just, I hate to put out the Tim Myman kind of question, but why not do it yourself? Why not go to the voters directly and ask for these changes rather than go through the legislature?
We have limitations. King County has particular limitations because we're special. We've been singled out. But we have limitations because all tax authority comes from the state. And what we need is for the legislature to simply give us the adequate authority to be able to do our job. You can speak with Dwight Dively, our genius budget director, after the show here, and he can tell you the exact technical reasons why we have challenges simply going out and asking the people. Others? Well, thank you all for being here. I'm going to just go ahead and speak for everyone. We will all be available to answer your questions. Again, this is our priority for this legislative session. If it doesn't happen this session, we are already on a path to deeper cuts in the next biennial budget. So we need to fix it. Thank you so much. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.